In the previous video, we kind of set up the very basics of music theory as far as what is our alphabet. And if you noticed from that previous one, I actually had left some holes, and some of those holes that I left in the scale would be right here, and right here, and right here, and right here, and right here. And I did that intentionally because there's so much information that kind of gets caught up, and it's really hard to go over it in just one video. So I wanted to kind of go and literally fill in the holes and fill in what is actually missing. So in the last video we did talk about what is a half step. So to kind of give you a quick recap, a half step is the distance between two adjacent notes, and in Western music it's going to be the shortest distance that we have between two tones. So the distance between B to C, we would call that a half step, or between E to F, we'd call that a half step. Why? Because that distance is the smallest distance that we have in music, and it's the shortest distance between two tones. It's two adjacent notes, essentially. So the next question is, what do we have in those other holes, in these places right here, in these little spots? And those definitely are something. So, well, we also did talk about that A to B is going to be a whole step. So from here to here, we would consider that a whole step. And a whole step is where we skip over a note. Well, what are we skipping over? So in order to do that, we need a little bit more information. So what we're going to go ahead and do now is discuss what that is. So in music, we do have something, and you may have seen this before. For all you newer cats, you might think that that is a hashtag. That is not a hashtag. This is not Twitter. I don't think that's what Mozart had in mind when they were using these symbols. But this is called a sharp. So that's a symbol that we commonly use in music, and it's called a sharp. And what a sharp does is it raises a note's pitch by a half step. So let's write that out. It raises a note's pitch by a half step. Well, we just discussed what a half step was. So this equals a sharp. That's what that symbol is. That symbol is a sharp. And a sharp raises a note's pitch by a half step. So for example, if we were to take this A that we have over here, and let's go ahead and use a different color now. Let's go ahead and let's try this color. What I can go ahead and do is put an A sharp right here in the center between A and B. Here I can have a C sharp, D sharp, F sharp, and finally G sharp. And this is actually more complete. And this altogether, when we do that whole thing altogether, we're going to call this our chromatic scale. The chromatic scale. Now the chromatic scale in music basically just means all the notes in music, and it would consist of A sharp, B, C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, G, and G sharp. And that is all the notes in music. Everything. Now, we did talk about that in an earlier video, that it goes from G and it wraps around back again to A, which is kind of true when we talk about the basic notes, but when we're more specific, it actually ends at G sharp and it would wrap around back around to A. So what you may also notice is that there's exactly 12 tones in music. We have A would make 1, and if you count all the way up through G sharp, you're going to have 12. So there's 12 tones in music, and then the distance from A to A sharp. So if we look at this distance here from A to A sharp, that's going to be considered a half step. The distance from A sharp to B is a half step. From B to C, we already have that marked. From C to C sharp, take a guess. It's a half step. C sharp to D is also a half step. Half step, half step, half step, half step, half step, and half step. So the entire chromatic scale is made up nothing but half steps. And actually I should probably mark out one more, which is if I were to go from G sharp back around to A, so if I took G sharp and I wrapped around back to A, that is also considered a half step. So the entire chromatic scale is made of entirely made of half steps.